name is Justin, and I am a son of God and an addict, and the host of the RICO 12 speaker meeting. And thanks to my God, the steps, and the fellowship of other addicts, I am living in the relative happy, joyous, and free life that is promised to those living in recovery. And I've been very active in the rooms of recovery since September of 2013. Welcome to the 116th meeting of RICO 12. RICO 12 is an organization with the mission of learning and sharing the similarities of addiction of all kinds, and gaining and sharing tools and hope from others who are trudging this road. We are an open meeting for all, no matter your life experience and background. To learn more about RICO 12, please go to www.rico12.com. That's RECO12.com. We are a self-supporting service, and we appreciate your help in keeping us working our 12th step in this manner. I'll put information and links in the chat of the live meeting and in the show notes of the podcast if you wish to contribute to this cause. We look forward each week to hearing from the light reflected by our speakers from their higher power. That light inspires hope, meaning, worth, and growth in us, the listening audience. Now, I'll introduce our guest speaker for today, Evie S., whose topic will be how I work my recovery program. Now, here's a little bit about Evie. Evie found Codependents Anonymous, CoDA, when CoDA was just a year old and has been working her CoDA recovery program for almost 35 years. She has done service throughout most of that time at every level of the fellowship, which has supported her recovery growth. She found CoDA after many years of therapy and other personal development efforts. She believes that CoDA and the 12 steps have given her the most important tools she needed to heal her relationships, especially with members of her family of origin. For 31 of those years, Evie was in a committed relationship and marriage with another member of CoDA. Their relationship went through many periods of struggle, and thanks to their CoDA recovery program, it became truly loving and supportive as they supported each other in their ongoing recovery journey. Take it away, Evie. The floor is yours.
Thanks, Justin. Hi, everybody. My name is Evie, and I am so grateful to be in recovery from my codependency. As Justin said, I found CoDA when it was very young because I was actively looking for it. I'm going to take a few minutes to just give you my background. My mother was a Holocaust survivor, not in the camps, but living in the south of France with phony ID, never knowing when they might have been turned in by people. And my father was kind of a Casper milquetoast. My mother basically ran him, and my mother and I started fighting when I started speaking, and I had a very challenging childhood, and then it became even more challenging when I was in college. My parents, I never cared whether I dated Jewish guys or not. And I ended up with somebody who wasn't Jewish, and they were threatening to disown me if I married him. And that just devastated me. So I was extremely codependent. The only thing that seemed to matter to me was whether I was in a relationship, and hopefully I had somebody who loved me, who made me feel worthwhile. Interestingly enough, from the outside, I looked pretty good. I had a good, very good career for a woman at that time. I went to work in the computer industry in 1967. But I managed to be married and divorced twice by the time I was 28 and had a 2.5-year-old son. And that's when I started my therapy. I did other things to try to, I was looking for myself. And thanks to my CoDA recovery program and the life I spent with my husband, Leo, I ended up with a wonderful life. I became the person I was meant to be. I was able to heal my relationships with all my family members, especially with my mother. Before, I had quite a few years, almost 20 years of good relationship with both of my parents, especially my mother, before I lost them both. And my life became what it was meant to be. And I am so grateful. one of the very important things that I found through my CoDA recovery is my spiritual life. Because of the issues that I had with my parents and religion, the whole idea of God was really hard for me. And I was very anti-religion. I'm still not I'm not part of any organized religion. The closest I come to having anything like a religion is my recovery program. And it took me a long time to evolve what my higher power is for me. And I love that in 12-step, we get to define our own higher power. I started out with Yoda because I couldn't come up with it. I didn't know what else. And I thought Yoda was just such an incredible being that, so that worked for a while. Where I got to is that my higher power is my true self connected to the rest of the universe. And that really works for me. When I can connect to my true self that is also connected to the rest of the universe, so I'm not being, exclusively focused on myself, my life really works. So it took me a long time to really come up with the best way to work my program. And I'm going to share that with you. So hold on while I share my screen. Okay, I'm actually going to go to this one first. Nope, that's not the one. I got to go the other way. Okay, I want to share with you what my daily routine is. It starts with what my goal in life is. And it took me a while to work this out. My goal in life is to live an emotionally and spiritually happy, healthy, and peaceful life of ease, filled with love, kindness, courage, compassion, safety, and the belief that I am enough, I am lovable, and I am loved. And that's my only goal in life. So when I wake up in the morning, I do the following. I wish my higher power good morning. I thank my higher power for this day. I thank my higher power for my life. And then I go inside and I look for 3 to 5 things that I'm grateful for in the moment. And I try not to repeat things all the time. When I first started doing this, I was saying the same things every day. And I realized that it was important that I kind of try to focus more on, recent things that had happened rather than always, being grateful for my husband and for my recovery program and that to look for other things as well. And then what I do is I go through the 12 steps in my head, and I'm going to go to the other document in a minute, because I've actually changed the wording of the 12 steps in a number of ways because I wanted the steps to be very loving and to not feel criticized by them. Okay, so at any time during the day when I start to feel unsettled, I stop and I connect with my higher power and I ask my higher power to help me to get clear about what's going on and what's bothering me. And then I look for acceptance of whatever it is that's bothering me. Acceptance is something that's so important to me. I like to say that I have 2 step zeros. The first one is awareness, because if I'm not aware of what's going on and what's bothering me, I'm going to have a really hard time healing it. So that's the first step 0. And then the second one is acceptance, because what I've learned is that if I can't accept what is, I'm going to have a really hard time turning it over to my higher power. I'm going to keep pulling it back and pulling it back. So I do my best to, with my higher power's help, to reach acceptance on whatever's bothering me. And then once I feel acceptance, I move on to the 12 steps. And then I have to be able to accept in my heart, not just in my head, which is very important. And if I can't accept right then, I ask my higher power to please help me to reach acceptance. And then when I am having difficulty accepting, the other thing I do is I often turn to the AA acceptance prayer, which I've put here. I'm sure many of you know it, so I'm not going to go through it. Okay, so what I'm going to do now is shift over to the 12 steps that I used today. The CoDA first step is we admitted we were powerless over others, that our lives had become unmanageable. The step I say today, I say it's fine. I could say we, but I say I admit that I'm powerless over all living beings, my thoughts, feelings, and reactions, the state of my body, my obsession with time, because that's always been a real issue for me. And I fill in the blank with anything else that feels appropriate at this time, and that my life had become unmanageable. So all I've done is I've expanded what I'm powerless over. Second step, which in CoDA is the same, I think is almost the same as in all 12-step programs, came to believe that a power greater than ourselves could restore us to sanity. I say it as, I believe that a power greater than my ego and my wounded self can restore me to sanity, and will restore me to sanity if I continue to work my CoDA recovery program. And the reason I changed that to and will is because I had several people, sponsees, my husband, say to me, yeah, I believe my higher power can, but I don't know that they will. So I thought it was important to include that part. Step 3, I had a horrendous time with step 3, not surprisingly, because of the God issues I had growing up. So in CoDA, made a decision to turn our will and our lives over to the care of God as we understood God. Sounds familiar, right? Mine is, it's funny, I don't know when I changed these to I do turn. I guess I turn my will and my life over to the care of my higher power, which is my true self that is directly connected to the rest of the universe. And obviously, for anybody that's going to use this, because I've given this to lots of people, you can fill in anything that feels right for you, okay? And then I say the CoDA third step prayer. And I've modified that very slightly to fit my what I believe my higher power is. But I believe this is such an incredible prayer. Higher power, I give to you all that I am and all that I will be for your healing and direction. Please make new this day as I release all my worries and fears, knowing you are both within me and all around me. The actual prayer, the approved prayer, is knowing you are by my side. Please help me to open myself to your love, to allow your love to heal my wounds, and to allow your love to flow through me and from me to those around me. May your will be done today and always. Amen. And if I can't do anything else, if I'm really struggling and I only have like 10 seconds or 15 seconds, I turn to this prayer. I just love this prayer. Then and I will say it took me a really long time to finally be able to truly do the third step. And I'm so grateful for that because I do it all the time now. Fourth step, CoDA made a searching and fearless moral inventory of ourselves. The way I say it, I regularly make a loving, searching, and courageous moral inventory of myself, including anything that is currently bothering me, such as resentments, pain, anger, fear, etc. And what was really important for me there is to add the word loving and to change the word fearless to courageous. Because I'm very rarely fearless. So, but I am courageous, and courage is acting in the face of fear. So that was a really important change for me. 5, admitted to God, to ourselves, and to another human being the exact nature of our wrongs. That's the CoDA version. Mine is, I admit to my higher power, myself, and another human being the exact nature of my inventory. And part of why I changed that is, first of all, I don't like the critical words, wrongs. And the other thing is that in CoDA, not only do we do an inventory of our wrongs, but we do an inventory of our assets. Because it's very important for those of us that are codependent to acknowledge all the assets that we have, because so many of us have been told that we didn't have assets, that we were wrong, bad, whatever. And so it's very important for us to also acknowledge our assets. Step 5. CoDA admitted to God, to ourselves, and to another human being the exact nature of our wrongs. Again, sounds familiar. Mine is, I admit to my higher power, myself, and another human being the exact nature of my inventory. So the same change that I made in somewhere. Anyway, I'm losing my place here. So, okay. Step 6, and I want to say something about step 6 and 7 before I move on to talking about them. The first time I worked through my steps, I just about skipped over steps 6 and 7 because I looked at them and I said, of course I'm entirely ready to have God remove all my defects of character. And of course I'm humbly asking God to remove them. And I just assumed, that was it. What I have learned is, boy, was I not ready. And even though I might have humbly asked my higher power to remove them, I immediately then pulled them back. So, what I've learned is that steps 6 and 7 are very, very important steps because it's when we truly ask our higher power to help us to become better people. So my versions of step 6, I am entirely ready to have my higher power remove from me all the things, and this is going to relate to my goal, that prevent me from being able to lead an emotionally and spiritually happy, healthy, and peaceful life of ease, filled with love, kindness, courage, compassion, and the belief that I am enough, I am lovable, and I am loved. And that says it for me. Okay, step 7, humbly ask God to remove our shortcomings. And the way I say it is, I humbly ask my higher power to remove all the things that prevent me from being able to live my life the way I want to live it. The same wording, my goal, the way I want to live my life to be. And then I say the 7th step prayer. Another prayer that I really love. And these prayers are CoDA prayers, if I didn't mention that, but I've modified them slightly. Higher power, please remove from me all the things that prevent me from being able to lead an emotionally and spiritually happy, healthy, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. The belief that I am enough, I am lovable, and I am loved, thus relieving me of the burden of my past. I put my hand in yours, trusting that the void that has been created will be filled with your unconditional love for me and for those in my life. And I want to say that the last sentence in that prayer, I consider it so important. I put my hand in yours, trusting that the void that has been created will be filled with your unconditional love for me and for those in my life. And that void, that is the reason that I always had such a hard time doing this step, because I would ask my higher power to remove the things, and then there was this void in me, because this is how I had lived my life for so long, and all of a sudden, it was empty. This is, the change back behavior. I don't know if any of you have ever read any of Melody Beattie's books. She wrote Codependent No More, and then she wrote Beyond Codependency. And in Beyond Codependency, one of the things she talked about was change back behavior, that when we change, often the people around us push us in a way to try to get us to change back to our old unhealthy behavior, because despite how much they may have hated a lot of it, in some ways they were comfortable with it. Well, this was also true for me, even though all of the things that I want my higher power to remove were hurting me. They were familiar. And when they started to not be there, I didn't know what to do. I was lost. So, that's why I consider that sentence to be so important. And what I've learned is that it's important for me to sit with the void, and let new things come in. And that's when the miracles happen. Okay, let me keep going. Step 8, made a list of all persons we had harmed and became willing to make amends to them all. The only thing I changed about this is that I added remembering to put myself at the top of that list. For codependents, that's really important, because we have tended to harm ourselves as much as, and sometimes a lot more than, others. So it's really important. Step 9, made direct amends to such people wherever possible, except when to do so would injure them or others. And the only thing I've added is remembering that I am one of those others. So I have to make sure when I'm making amends that I'm not going to put myself in a situation that might seriously harm me. Now I have to be careful about that, because I could easily convince myself that I should avoid some amends that I really need to make, because I think it's going to harm me. But it's not going to harm me in a way. Even though it may feel like it's hurting me, it's really going to help me in the long run. So I have to be careful about that one. And there was something else I was just going to say about that, and I can't remember what it is. Oh, yeah. The other thing I've learned is that often the most important amends are living amends, to change my behavior. So, in any instances where particularly, yes, I want to make, I made direct amends to all the people that I could. And it is really important, I believe, that I always do my best to change my behavior, because saying I'm sorry and then turning around and doing the same thing to someone else just doesn't work. That's not an amends. Okay, step 10, continue to take personal inventory, and when we were wrong, promptly admitted it. I changed the wording on this. I continue to take personal inventory, and when I discover I have acted in a way I regret, I promptly admit it and make appropriate amends. And again, I'm not changing. I have not changed the intent of any of these. I've just changed the wording to make them work better for me. And I've had a lot of people tell me that that's really helped them. So, step 11, sought through prayer and meditation to improve our conscious contact with God as we understand God, praying only for God's will for us, knowledge of God's will for us, and the power to carry that out. The only thing that I've changed is God to higher power, and praying only for knowledge of what is her will for me and the power to carry it out, because clearly my higher power is female. And then I do a very short 11-step prayer. Higher power, please grant me knowledge of what your will is for me and grant me the power to carry it out. And then the 12th step, having had a spiritual awakening as the result of these steps, I do my best to carry this message. I don't like the word try. That's one of the things I learned from Yoda. There is no try. There is only do or not do. So I do my best to carry this message to others who suffer and to practice these principles in all my affairs. And that's how I work my program. And rather than babbling on any longer, I am going to stop, and you can start the questions a few minutes early. That's unusual the one thing I should mention. So my husband and I, we met online. We both worked for the same computer company. We met online on a 12-step notes file. When I had, we met in, I'm trying to think, when did we meet online? 1989. And we became good friends. We didn't work in the same facility, but because of this notes file, we got to know each other, and then groups of us would get together, and we became good friends. And after about a year or so, we realized we were in love. And 2 years later, we got married. And we worked our recovery together a lot of the time. Now, when we had problems with each other, it's a third marriage for both of us. So needless to say, we brought a lot of crap into the marriage. And so we had some tough times, but we worked it, and we made a commitment to each other that we would not abandon each other, because we both had huge abandonment issues. We would not abandon each other ever without doing our best to solve whatever problems we had. And the only conditions that we would ever leave the marriage is if staying in it was really harming one or the other of us. And we kept that commitment for 31 years of being together as a couple and 29 years of marriage. And he passed away June 6th of this year. And I have such a hole in my heart, and I miss him so much. And I just want to say that as difficult as this time is for me, I can't imagine what it would be like without my CoDA recovery and all the support that I have from all my CoDA and other 12-step recovery friends. And I'm so grateful for that. So hopefully I haven't dragged us down with that. So I will now stop.
Oh, Evie, thank you so much for sharing that. And our hearts go out to you.
Thank you.
Thank you for sharing vulnerably and also this information. If you want to stop sharing your screen, yeah, perfect.
I was just going for it.
Excellent. Thank you so much. So this has been really good, and I really appreciate your insights there. And I've got questions that have come in from our live audience. I've written down some questions. A reminder to our live audience, if you have a question for Evie, please type it in the Q&A link at the bottom of your Zoom window. We'll get to those as we come into that. The first question I want to ask comes from your personal goal, your personal mission there. It seems very crafted, kind of boiled down. How did you go about creating that goal, and what was the process of doing that?
Great question. Thank you. It just sort of evolved. We lived in Southern California for 19 years, and we had moved there from the Boston area, and we moved back to New England 4 years ago. But while I was in Southern California, I had a very wonderful yoga instructor who became a close friend also, a very spiritual person. And she would say wonderful things at the end of yoga while we were doing Shavasana. She would say wonderful things. And the life of ease filled with came from her. Something that she said during, one of the meditations that she read to us while we were doing Shavasana. And then the other things just evolved over time. I started with wanting to live a life of ease and a spiritual, an emotional and spiritual. Those were the key things for me. And so I started with, I wanted to live in an emotional and spiritual life of ease. And then I just looked at the things that weren't working and looked at what the flip of that would be in a not too general way, but a relatively general way. And I just kept adding things and taking things out, changing the wording. Just like it took me a really long time to decide what my higher power is. Was the same process. It evolved over time.
Thank you for sharing that. I appreciate you walking us through that process. Yeah, I've also tried to boil down a few things into a goal of sorts. My why. Why do I do these things? And it's an evolving process. Thank you for sharing yours. All right, we have a few questions that have come in, and a couple of them are very similar. They're asking how they can get these steps and these how you work your recovery. Now, and I'll share this audibly so everybody gets this. I have the links to those. I will download those. You can email me at reco12pod@gmail.com, RECOPOD, RECO12pod@gmail.com, and I can get those to you. All of this will also be in the show notes of the podcast. You'll be able to link to those documents in the podcast show notes, and we'll get those out to you. But thank you for those questions. Next question comes from an anonymous attendee, and this person asks or says, "Thank you for your share. I wonder how you
Whoops. I just lost your audio. I don't hear you.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay. Very good. Sorry about that. Okay. So the question is, how do you surrender and let go when something's eating at you? What does that process look like? I mean, I know you walked us through the steps there, but tell us a little bit more about that.
Well, the first thing I do is I stop. Close my eyes. Breathe. Breathing's very important. I slow my breathing down because often if something's bothering me, my breathing has speeded up. And I connect with my higher power. And then I just, kind of ask myself, all right, what's going on here? What is it that's bothering me? And that's the awareness part. and then I start to go through the process. And I don't necessarily do the whole, it depends on how much time I have. If I'm in a meeting somewhere, I don't mean a 12-step meeting, although it could happen in a 12-step meeting and I get triggered. That's been known to happen more often than I like. What I might do is I might just stop, close my eyes, turn to my higher power and say, help. Now that works. I find that the most important thing is that very first step, not the first step, but stopping, not letting myself react out of the level of trigger I'm feeling. So hopefully that answers the question.
Yeah, thank you so much. And that's something I need to remember very, very often in my life. Sometimes when something happens, I immediately react rather than take a breath and stop and ask myself a few questions and turn that over to my higher power rather than saying, oh, I need to react right now and take this over myself when often that causes more trouble than good.
I want to say something more because you just reminded me of something. One of the other things that my husband and I learned was that if we were really triggered, that the best thing to do was to take a time out. And, but not just run out of the room, but to say, I think I really need to go be by myself for a little while. I'm not abandoning you. Why don't we go to separate places? And when we're feeling better, we can talk about this, So that's just an example. I mean, it can happen in other people and other situations. By the way, I just want to say that it looks like we're getting a thunderstorm. So hopefully we won't have any internet problems.
All right. Well, if we do, hopefully it won't cause any big issues, but hopefully everything's safe and good. I love watching thunderstorms roll in, but yes, I understand the problems they can bring with them. All right. Thank you. Thank you for going through that. I really appreciate that. Another question that I wrote down here. You talked about there being a God issue and God and religion being a real struggle for you to get into your third step and be able to do that. What was the thing that kind of split the two, religion and God, for you and allowed you to say, you know what, I can be good with the God of my understanding, my higher power of my understanding, without convoluting it with religion?
That's an interesting question. Well, I had already turned my back on religion. So it just, as I worked the steps over time, in the earlier days, let me backtrack for a second. I'm going to use a very specific example. I don't know if this is going to answer your question exactly, but so my son was the easiest kid in the world to raise, for which I was so grateful because I was a single parent from the time he was 2.5 on. And when he was 17 years old, as one of my friends liked to say, he took all the not rebelling and rolled it into one thing and came home one day, the summer before his senior year in high school, and said, Mom, I want to enlist in the Marines for delayed entry. Now, I was a peace marcher during the Vietnam War. And the thought of him going into the military, and of course, he was the only thing I'd had for a lot of years, because none of my relationships were working. I went into a complete and total panic. And I didn't know what to do. And I had raised him to make his own decisions, so I knew I had to say yes. So I said yes. By the way, this is while the first Iraq war was starting. I mean, talk about my higher power setting up the perfect situation. And I said yes. He started doing the training. The ground war started. This was the ground war started maybe 6 months later. I was in terror. I was in absolute terror. I was convinced he was going to get drafted, go in and get killed. And I had no choice but to turn this all over to the higher power that I didn't have at that point. And it worked. It turned out spectacular. It got really, really good. The ground war was over in 4 days. His asthma started to act up while he was in infantry training, because of course, not only did he want to go in, but he wanted to go into the infantry. And he ended up getting a medical discharge, and therefore could never be, if there ever was another draft, could never be touched or anything, called back or whatever. And I had my first spiritual awakening. And that's when I started to be able to separate a true higher power having nothing to do with religion. And it just built on that.
I really appreciate that example. I mean, I can imagine the fear, the resentment, all of those things that are going in there. And then the relief and the ability to say, okay, I'm grateful this higher power that I really didn't have or believe in has stepped in and helped me out the way that I need that higher power to do that. Thank you for sharing that. All right, another question from our live audience. This is from Pierre. Pierre says, what do you find most important in getting a good relationship with parents?
Learning to shut my mouth. That's a great question. I can still picture exactly where I was the first time I didn't argue with my mother. The first time she said something, my mother is a Holocaust survivor. I mean, can you imagine what she had, the fear she lived with? And by the way, unfortunately, she transferred that fear to me in utero. It was, I lived with the fear that the world was an unsafe place for a very long time. But anyway, in answer to the question, we were riding in the car, and my mother said, mark my words, there's going to be a revolution in this country. Now, this was back in 1991. So if she said it today, I might agree with her. Just joking. But, and I didn't respond. And she couldn't argue with me because I hadn't said anything. So she just stopped. And then the other thing that I learned to do, this is really important. I learned to acknowledge her. She would say something wacko to me, and I'd say, Mom, I know you're trying to help, and the way you're going about it just isn't working. And because I acknowledged her first, that she was trying to help, she was able to hear me say, and the way you're going about it just isn't working, without thinking I was criticizing her. She was able to hear me. That made such a difference. And I've learned to do that as much as I can when I remember to, or my higher power reminds me to, in my life. Makes a huge difference.
I wrote that phrase down for my own use and to remind myself of when I'm trying to help and it's just not working. I know you're trying to help, but the way you're going about it just is not working. Very powerful. Thank you for sharing that.
Yeah, I don't know where I heard that or where I got it from. Higher power, I got it from, but yeah, that has helped me immensely.
Awesome. I love how within your goal and within the definition and the prayers of your higher power, you go back to this concept of becoming the person you were meant to be. Um, who is that person? How does one eventually come upon the person they are meant to be? Because, man, I sure sit often and go, who am I supposed to be? What am I supposed to do? What am I meant to be? How did you come to that conclusion?
It just evolved over time. Basically, it was by healing the traumas. It's interesting. I'm part of a small group that meets. We started out doing a step study using Russell Brand's program. I don't know if you guys are familiar with it. You know, are you fucked? Do you want to be unfucked? The steps 1 and 2. Anyway, and then we moved over to reading this book called Complex PTSD, Post-Traumatic Stress Disorder. And we were reading the part today about healing our childhood traumas. And that was read the question to me again, because I just lost track of exactly where I was going with this.
Yeah, the question was, how do you find out who you're
who I truly am?
Who the person you're supposed to be. Yep.
Yeah. And you know, it was so important to heal the traumas, because all the traumas had caused me to bury parts of me that are really important. And so I wasn't, I wasn't the person that I was meant to be. All the relationships that I got into with men, I always found emotionally unavailable men, which is crazy. I mean, you would think I would be looking for emotionally available men, but I always found emotionally unavailable men because I was so terrified of intimacy. You know, so right there, I had to heal that. I had to get to a point where I was not, I could be afraid, but I was courageous enough to be vulnerable. So that's just one example. And I want to thank my dog, because she barks at thunder, but she's not. She's being good. She must know how important this meeting is. She's coming to join us. Come on, Fanny, you can come up. Come on. Anyway, I hope I answered the question.
Oh, thank you for sharing that. Yes, I appreciate that, because yeah, it is something that's important for me to eventually get to. Sometimes, well, all the time, I'm very impatient for, hey, higher power, strike me with this knowledge right now, so that I'm good to go from here. And it's always a learning process, and that's a good thing.
Oh, yes. Impatience was definitely one of my challenges.
Right. So Evie, you have been actively working your program for almost 35 years. How do you keep it so it's not stale? How do you keep it fresh?
Sponsees. Big part of that. I learn as much from my sponsees as they learn from me. And almost invariably, they become friends, which is, I love it. I love it. New people at meetings, that's how I keep it fresh. New problems. Just because I've been working the program for almost 35 years doesn't mean that I don't still face challenges. I mean, look at this challenge that I'm facing, having lost my husband, my best friend, my closest fellow traveler in recovery. Can you hear the thunder? Yeah. So, yeah. I'm not getting the chat, and I just saw one, because I don't have time to read the chat because I'm answering. I got to say that I am right now overloaded with people who are contacting me. Somebody just put in, how can I reach you? as much as I'd like to help more people, I just can't. I can't anymore right now. And it's so, as a true codependent, it's really hard for me to say that. But one of the most important things I've learned is how to set boundaries. I was always one of these people that gave myself away too much. I'm also a recovering workaholic. Yeah. I'm also a recovering workaholic, and I would give myself away constantly. So I'm sorry, but I just can't give out my contact information right now.
So Evie, I honor that so greatly. And on top of that, I am so grateful that you are willing to give away just an hour of your time here to talk to us and share your experience, strength, and hope here. But we have learned a ton here. Is there anything else, any other words of wisdom that you have for us before we start closing this out?
I just want to say to people, anybody that's relatively new in any sort of program or who is thinking you don't need your program anymore, I truly believe that our 12-step recovery is, Annie, all right. She doesn't like thunder. So the fact that she didn't start barking earlier and that she's only been just growling a little bit is wonderful. Anyway, this recovery is not easy. It's really hard. It's really challenging. And it is so worth it. So I want to just encourage everybody, please don't give up. Please don't. And you might want to consider if you are in AA or any of the programs that use the AA Big Book. When I found CoDA, we didn't have any literature, or we had 3-step pamphlets. So I learned my program from AA and things like that. The Joe and Charlie AA Big Book workshops. Oh my God, I just adore them. The book itself, I've actually attended a number of CoDA meetings that use the AA Big Book. And all we did was we changed the word drinking to thinking and alcoholism to codependency because, the disease of the body is the alcoholism. The disease of the mind.
Oh, I think we lost Evie. I think the thunder and lightning may have caught up here. But Evie, if you come back in or if you can hear this, I love what you're sharing there about the big book and the disease of the mind. It's all there.
Okay. Can you hear me? Can you hear me?
I hear you now. Yep.
Okay.
You're back.
What I was saying, find a CoDA meeting, find an ACA meeting. I just got is unstable. Can you still hear me? Okay.
Yes.
ACA expanded to include adult children of dysfunctional families. I'm so grateful for that. Or just use your AA program, although some meetings don't encourage that, or NA program or whatever, But I truly believe that codependency is the root cause of all of our other addictions. Those are things that we use to try to deal with our codependency. So
love it. And I also use the big book in all of my programs that I'm in. I find just changing the word from, drinking to whatever it may be, from alcohol to whatever it may be, it works universally. And that's one of the reasons I love doing this podcast, finding the similarities of addiction and the similarities of the solution to recovery. And thank you for being a part of that.
Oh, you're very welcome. This has been wonderful. I'll tell you, every time I do one of these, it helps me. And right now it's helping me so much because I feel connected to all of you, and that's what I need right now. That's what I need. So thank you for asking me.
You are very welcome. And thank you so much. That was a great RICO 12 weekly speaker meeting for all addicts and those wanting to learn more about addiction and recovery therefrom. Please consider joining our private Facebook group. The link is in the show notes and in the chat of this meeting, and participate in our community, asking questions and answering others' questions that may come up. If you've not yet rated and reviewed the podcast in Apple Podcasts, please go do so now. It is a great way to help us work our 12th step in sharing this message with others. I invite the audience to come back next week when we will be hearing from Rachel W., whose topic will be recovery prayers coming true. Rachel has a ton of experience, strength, and hope in Al-Anon and in SLAA and is very excited to speak with us. I look forward to it. Now let's launch off into the rest of our day with the slightly modified version of the CoDA third step prayer that Evie will say for us. Have at it, Evie.
Okay. Do you want me to put it back up or just say it?
You can just say it, and if you would like, yeah.
Higher power, I give to you all that I am. Wait a minute, am I saying the right thing? No, I'm not. Hold on, I'm going to put it up because my brain is the storm is just...
Understood completely, yes.
Making me a little crazy here. And I have to go walk her. Where am I? Nope, next one. Okay. Yeah, I did have the right one. Higher power, I give to you all that I am and all that I will be for your healing and direction. Please make new this day as I release all my worries and fears, knowing you are both within me and all around me. Please help me to open myself to your love, to allow your love to heal my wounds, and to allow your love to flow through me and from me to those around me. May your will be done today and always. Amen.
Amen. Thank you so much, Evie. Keep coming back, everybody. It works when I work it, so work it. You are worth it.
Standing still a moment, carving out this time, reflecting on the landscape of this life of mine. Peaks too high to conquer, streams too wide to cross, troughs too deep to walk through without incurring loss. Yet here I am, still standing tall, despite the rough terrain. One like me survived the storms and walked through wind and rain. Still standing, I will fight the good fight, still searching